Teethridge Manor really sort of speaks to everything that I love to do as a director, in that it is a environment, like a different world that's been created.
It all goes back to childhood. I think it was just a love of, all things Gothic and Gothic literature, but also of creature feature movies I used to watch on Sunday afternoon. So it was sort of a mix of all of that and wondering if was there a way to turn that into a Criminal Minds episode.
It's written by Sharon Lee Watson, who's new this year, but somehow I feel like she was sent from like some alternate universe where she was able to basically write things I've always dreamt of shooting. I can't explain the synchronicity. I feel like we are Laura and James Heathridge, only with no romance.
Matthew is an amazing director, and he brought so much to it visually, and I think we were really on the same page from the very first minute. We wanted the entire world of the unsub to feel like it was set in a completely different time and place, and to not be able to place it. And that's, definitely part of the unsub's pathology, in that in sort of the walls of his home, he lives in this delusional world that's completely separate from the outside world, and he doesn't really have to interact with the outside world all that much. So he can live in this sort of Gothic time warp.
We're different from other people. I never should have put you out in the world to subject you to ridicule.
Ridicule?
People can be so cruel.
For the main guy, I knew the whole thing kind of hinged on James Heathridge, and the slightly absurd nature of the script made it also incredibly important, where if it was poorly acted or not even wonderfully acted, I think the whole thing could take a drastic crash into a mountain. So I just wanted to get the best actor available, the best actor ever. And I had worked with Kyle Gallner before in a movie that I acted in, and I saw him and sort of became slightly obsessed.
A lot of things can be pretty, this is how it goes, and structured, and this one's really different. It is. It doesn't necessarily focus so much on like the crime side of it as much as it really shows, my character and my family.
I've always loved the show, so I was really excited about that. I was really interested in the role because of the nature of it. It's sort of tricky in a very interesting way. Part of it takes place in 1996, and I have a psychotic break, and I do all of these terrible things. And then part of it takes place now, where I come to my son in the form of a vision, and so I'm not exactly real. And so there were challenges in it that I was excited by.
It's an honor to be a chosen defender.
An honor and a curse for this family. Regardless, it is our sacred duty. Be vigilant.
Matt's shooting it in a really interesting way, where it's almost like an old-style horror film of there's shots that are kind of reminiscent of Psycho, of shadows and everything, as opposed to just watching somebody get murdered. You kind of see it all through a screen. I'm really curious to see how it turns out, actually.
This script was just chock full of design elements, much more than we usually have. Down to finding the right house, to the paintings, to the custom handmade storybook and wardrobe and makeup, and then the basement set, which was a kind of almost operatic kind of, the witch dunking set. It was a lot of work, but it really fell into place.
The house was a character. It was one that it couldn't just be your standard shingled type of home. This house had to be something that really represented the characters within the story. A home that maybe at one time was a very grand kind of a property that really had been neglected over the years, and time had kind of forgotten this particular property and maybe the people that live within it. So that was kind of what we were working off of. And there's a property that I've been familiar with for several years. It was built in 1882, and as soon as we looked at it, we knew it was it. And a coincidence also was that the first episode Matthew directed for the show, which was 2 seasons ago, we were looking at houses that were a little similar to this, and I showed him this house 2 seasons ago. So we really kind of had the same thing in mind right from the very beginning, and that was just a question of making it all work for the story.
It made it possible because of the scale of the house, because of the set deck that was already there. It really set the whole design in motion.
This episode had a cool element to it, in that this guy is killing girls by sewing them into these constricting, poison-dipped gowns.
We had to do a lot of research to narrow down the time period to see when that specific play was, so that we got all the pieces of the period correct. Costume houses, they're hard to find intact unless you're in Europe, really. We drew sketches for them all. We did palettes. One of them we made very dark and creepy. One was very light and sweet. We did some of the construction, and we had some of it farmed out, and then we rented a lot of the basic pieces, all the underneath pieces. The corsets were all part of the costume. I guess there was a little confusion. Not everyone really understands, you know, the making of the corsets and how they work, and that once you're in them, they're kind of hard to get out of, on your own anyway. Damn. So it was a little daunting at first, but as frightening as it went really smoothly and really quickly, and I think everybody was pretty pleased at the end.
This episode in particular has so many weird nuances and details that if they're not done, at least to me, a specific way, it might be too cheesy or not scary or too... It's like those fine line stuff. So with the paintings, I sort of immediately thought, like, okay, we gotta make sure these are really the right thing. Basically, this guy's painting paintings that he thinks of in his head, and then finding girls that look like these paintings and killing them, which is a very neat idea. But what I was trying to explain is if the paintings are done too well, and they look like the girl that he's finding, our show is no longer a real show. Our show's like, it really is the X-Files or something, because he's a psychic. We hired a painter who was a very talented guy to do these, but he was so talented that he couldn't really achieve like what I had hoped for and what Sharon had hoped for. So after trying and trying and trying and hiring a guy, and then we took the ones that the gentleman that we hired to paint painted, and then I painted over them, if that makes any sense. So it was more of a defacement. Set design is so integral to creating a world. So the minute I heard Sharon's just broad strokes of the episode, I knew Vincent would be as excited as I was. So this is like 3 months before we started filming. I was telling him, there's going to be a dungeon in a well, and he immediately, being a bit of a genius, came up with all these great little nuances to make it better that he'd wanted to try.
I added the element of the furnace. It was kind of reverberating, Hansel and Gretel, just a lot of storybook ideas. Also that it gave a nice color behind the well. And then just the technical aspect of the well was really a challenge, because what you had to have was a well on set that was deep enough for an actress that had to actually be able to fill with water and overflow. So there had to be a catch trough. And it seems like not that difficult, but actually it had to be plumbed so that the warm water could be pumped in from inside that we worked with special effects on. Then we had to build a separate well that was 11 or 12 feet deep up on a platform so you could get those shots from the bottom of the well looking past the girl in the water up at the person looking down with a ceiling piece above, and you also had the shots looking down, so you really saw someone down in the well. And you don't want to elevate an entire set 8 or 10 feet off the ground, so we had to mix those two pieces.
I'll get it.
This girl has been told her whole life, the devil's coming for you, the devil's coming for you, the devil's coming for you. So it's just sort of such a perfect ending that at the end, the devil literally does come for her. And it's sort of, again, a creative thing we were able to do that we don't normally get to do on the show. I don't think we've ever shown the devil before. I know we haven't, as a matter of fact. And so that was just the greatest. The shot sort of revealing her alone sort of puts it back into the reality of our world. Could have definitely gone either great or not so great, and I'm delusional enough to think it went incredibly great.